Yes, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm Jacob Turner. Joining me as he always does is our very own publisher, Andrew Jones, fresh back from a trip to New York, a trip from, can I say the word hell in the first 30 seconds of this
trip from hell. It was the trip from hell.
I won't make you recap it because we just spent about 45 minutes talking about it, but
it's the trip.
Just a brutal trip. This is what I'll summarize it.
Breaking news on the side of the interstate in Delaware. How about that? Because even though I wasn't supposed to drive, it was not part of the plan, but it ended up
is the reason you just got back yesterday. Game Saturday, got back Monday. I think that probably tells you everything you need to know right there.
Brutal.
Yeah, it's a brutal one to say the least. But AJ, I guess the positive thing is you had a lot of time in a car to think about Carolina basketball and where they're at right now.
My time in the car was thinking about driving in the oncoming traffic the entire time.
You didn't spend any time thinking about
that's all I thought about. It was the worst trip ever, and it ended up costing him a ton of money. That's why we are looking for advertisers and sponsors. Email us at thimedia@yahoo.com.
Hit us up.
If you'd like to be a part of THI, you will be a part of us. You're not just someone that's going to say, here's the ad and send us money every month or whatever. I want you to be a part of us. Give me a little bit of insight. What are the perks? I'll give you some inside information because I would imagine you're a Carolina fan. So that's probably come join the family. And here's another thing I thought about. If you have a business that you want to push and you want to come onto one of our pods, like a football show or basketball show, we'll bring you on for a few minutes, talk about Tar Heels, pitch your business, and then we'll get you off so we can go on with the show. Yeah. But my buddy Taylor Zarzer, who does SEC and he has a golf show on Sirius XM, very good friend of mine, long time ago when he was doing radio in Raleigh, he would do that. He would go, he was a car dealership. He'd have a guy come on every Friday and do picks, college football picks. And he paid him a ton of money, but he also was great advertising for his business. So not that we're saying you got to pay us a ton of money, although we have more listeners probably than Taylor did at the time with that station, but we're looking to get creative. So thimedia@yahoo.com, send us an email and we can talk. I'm already talking with a few people. Let's get creative. Let's help your business. You help our business and we can have some fun doing it. And you can become a little bit of an insider.
Yeah, man. A lot of perks for doing that. We'd love to partner with anybody. So hit us up, man, especially if you're a Carolina fan, you own a business. We'd love to talk and see what we can work out. So, yeah, good plug there, AJ. Way to do it early on, too, because we love to do it with like 2 minutes left in the podcast.
I get people saying, dude, why don't you do that earlier? And by the way, we're wearing the same color shirt.
Yeah, I was trying to go Christmas theme. I was trying to find my Santa hat, and I couldn't find it. So I was like, I'll just put on a green sweater because it.
Yeah, apparently this is Christmas Eve, right?
Yeah, supposopely. Yeah, supposedly. It does not feel like it, but it is Christmas.
Although I will say this, though, it doesn't feel like Christmas Eve to me. And anyway, I'm going to grind for a while, and then I'm pulling back. So we're going to post some stuff at about 7:30 tonight, and we're not going to post again until Thursday morning. I haven't had a day off since June 25th, 2023. Yeah. So that was the day of the Cure concert. My wife and I went to go see the Cure up in Maryland. So I'm going to take Christmas Day off. I'm going to see my dad down in Wilmington. Kim, Ellie, and I are going down there and come back, and I'm not taking my laptop.
I love it.
It's going to be a day off. First day off, I think, I don't know what that is, 560-something days or whatever. So no laptop.
Yeah.
I'm not opening it. So we're going to get a ton of stuff posted today, but then nothing until Thursday morning.
Yeah, but we'll have a lot of videos still coming out this week doing the basketball show, football show, couple drops, obviously bowl game Saturday, which we'll talk about in the football show.
And I know we're doing basketball, but there's media stuff Friday in Boston at Fenway Park. The way my flight's timed, if it's not delayed, I should be able to get there and get that stuff. There should be some interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Nothing else, just being inside Fenway Park, awesome cool photos. But
absolutely,
hopefully we'll have some stuff from Boston Friday if the flight goes well, which is a massive if these days.
Yeah, especially flying up in that area, snow and all that bull crap going on in the Northeast. Not the place you really want to be in the middle of December.
Yeah, I
but
spend way too much time in cold places this time of year.
Yeah, man. Why can't you just play like a bowl game in Miami or something?
It was 19 outside Madison Square Garden and it felt like 8 for the 20 plus minutes I was waiting for my Uber.
God, that sucks, man. Absolutely freezing up there this time of year. Not the places you want to be, but I mean, hey, man, it's dedication to the craft and dedication to what we do here at Tar Illustrated. Because AJ, as you say many times, we go where the Tar Heels go. So perfect segue as well, talking about MSG, because we're going to talk, not recap the game, but we're just going to talk about how big of a win that really was for North Carolina. I know, some people, it's like, it's late December. They're 7-5. How big of a win could it really be? But when you look at the net, which we'll talk about the net a little bit later too, you look at the state of ACC right now, just being absolutely pitiful conference. There's not a lot of, great win opportunities when you dive into conference play. So where Carolina was at, struggling against a lot of these teams, losing the games, like Michigan State, like Alabama, like Auburn, just to name a few. This was a game that we talked about in the show last week leading into it, of the importance of Carolina winning it. Just get the win. You got to find a way. Doesn't really matter how you play. Doesn't really matter what happens in the game. You'd like to see a good performance. I don't necessarily think we saw a great performance in North Carolina by any means. I'm still not really sure how they won the game, which we spent some time off camera talking about it, but they found a way and they got it done, taking them up to 2-5 in Q1 wins, with those coming over Dayton and UCLA. So, AJ, you were obviously there. You just got back last night, so we don't need to recap that trip like we've already done. But how important was that, man? You could see the relief on the players and Hubert's face and how they talked afterwards. I mean, I think it was just a big win for a number of reasons, but also for the individuals on that team and in the coaching staff too.
One of the things I've always enjoyed doing in this business is going beyond the out of bounds lines to really understand teams, because who a team is on the court or on the field, they take whoever they are with them onto that surface. So it's revealed there. And so much of what happens off that surface determines who and what they are. And I've always found that part of covering teams and athletes and coaches very, very interesting, almost as interesting and at times as interesting, depending on what a team's going through, as what they do on the fields of play. And with this club, at MSG, we got to sit almost courtside. All right. We were sitting right next to the CBS on-court reporter, the woman that was doing the game. I can't remember her name.
I can't remember her name either, but I know.
And she had someone with her. There were two women there, and the one that was with her was kind of organizing a lot of stuff. They're really good. And we're that close to the court, which we're not as often as we used to be. When I started in this business, we were always right on the court, but not as much now because they sell those seats. I'm glad we were here for multiple reasons, because I really got a healthy close-up look at the Tar Heels' disposition and their demeanor, their interaction, which I thought was really, really impressive given where they were as a team going in. Also, the stage, to win on that stage just helps a team and helps this team. It was needed. Like there were, if the Tar Heels, excuse me, being in all that 9-degree temperatures, if the Tar Heels as a team had to go to the doctor last week to figure out what's wrong, the doctor would say, okay, take this for this. Here's a shot for that, and take this for that. And what he would have prescribed is go to Madison Square Garden, play in the full house, and win on that stage, and win with 80% of the building North Carolina fans cheering you on, encouraging you from the get-go. At the Dean Dome, maybe it would have been a slightly different crowd, because I think a lot of those people inherently aren't going to be as rowdy, because the lower bowl or a lot of people just don't get very rowdy. And this time of year, there'd be no students there. What you had was a holiday spirit. I mean, it was a holiday spirit. There are people that they're done working for a week and a half. They're exhaling. They've got their beers. They're all dressed in their gear. I was thoroughly impressed with how many Carolina fans I saw, and some of the ones I met. Some of them saw me on the concourse and came over and talked, and it was like a different vibe, Jacob, just with the fans. They were just thrilled to see the Tar Heels there, because they're probably from up there. Some may have traveled there for the game. It was a very festive atmosphere. And the Tar Heels eventually allowed that to help fuel them, because the fans, when they got down big against Florida and Charlotte, you could feel it in the building. When they got down big against Alabama at the Dean Dome, you could feel it in the building. A different Saturday, they got down big at MSG, but you couldn't feel it. The fans were just dying for like a shot to go in. They were dying for a steal. And when they got it, even though they were down, 11, 12, whatever it was, it felt like the basket tied the game or almost tied the game. Or it was a key play. They were trying to be the flint to spark the team throughout the entire game. I think the Heels eventually fed off of that. I also think now that the players left New York and went home, went their separate ways. 3 of them are from right there, but they went their separate ways for the holidays. They're coming back, I think, Christmas night. I think tomorrow night they come back and they practice, or the 26th maybe. So all these positive things occurred, and it sort of stacked one positive on top of another. But the constant was the great atmosphere in the building, the very pro-Carolina atmosphere in the building, and you can see the players feeding off it. Ian clearly fed off of it. He's a New York guy, and that kind of town wants to ride the wave of a player doing something special. And they will do it in a town like that, different than a lot of other places. So I think it lifted him. The grittiness of the team in the second half, the Carolina fans were dying for it. And they got it. So the fans were pushing them in a sense. I hope this makes sense what I'm saying, because I'm sitting there watching it and I'm thinking, and I'm talking with Adam sitting next to me, and we're sharing observations, and it was very real that this was different. Like there was a sixth man element, but it was, I'm going to call it a sixth current, because it was more than a sixth man. It was a current, I think, that helped the team. So they win the game. They walk off the court. They held them off. They did it when Elliot Cadeau making a really good defensive play after the switch, bodying up Sebastian Mack. And here's a guy who struggled again, whose defense hadn't been great, 5 more turnovers again, but he made the play. And Elliot was so happy after the game. Elliot walked off the court in Charlotte in tears. He had that terrible turnover. And I was trying to figure out, where is his headspace? His headspace is a term that's come up with this team more this year than I've ever heard it before in my life. And his headspace was phenomenal after the game because they won. And he said, I didn't screw up, basically. I have a piece that maybe I ran yesterday. I don't remember. It's all whirlwind right now. But there's a quote in there. He says, look, my focus was not screwing up because he screwed up the other night. And he made that defensive play. So he's in a great place coming off the court. RJ gets a win at home. RJ battled through and got 17 points. And people are dogging him. They got to look at the whole of the game. He's averaging 4+ rebounds a game, 4+ assists a game. He's doing a lot of things to help the team win. He's just not shooting like he did a year ago. Seth Trimble, 11 of his 12 points in the second half. He's been struggling some lately. He had a 7-point stretch that was huge in the game. His pump fake 3 from the left corner and drive up against one of the UCLA bigs where he drew a foul and hit 2 free throws 45 seconds after hitting a 3. That was such a huge moment because it was in that 10, 11, 12-point range, and he gave him a 5-point spark. That spark was not in Charlotte. That spark was not there against Bama. That spark was not there against Auburn. I'm saying for the team collectively, nobody had that. So they were finding little ways to do those things. He was so happy after the game. RJ was so happy after the game. Everybody around the program was. Hell, I talked to Bubba Cunningham after the game. He's down by the locker room. Bubba was happy. And he's been through a lot of stress lately.
Yeah.
So in my very long-winded response, it goes beyond basketball. They didn't play real well. And there were a lot more, if you read my Inside the Game, there were a lot more things to pick at than not. But they got to win. They beat a good team that should have closed them out but didn't. So credit the Tar Heels for taking advantage. And they did it on that stage in that environment that filled them with so many good things. I used to know this girl whose mother used to say, call it the warmies. When someone gives you the warmies, you just feel all good inside. And it's like the whole thing gave them the warmies. And they take that home for the holiday. And then they come back and they got Campbell, which shouldn't be an issue. And then they go hit ACC play. I think it was the timing was needed 100%. It was great timing. And I think the way it played out, where they can look at themselves and say, guys, we didn't play well, and we still beat UCLA on a neutral site. We could be a much better team than we've been. I think all that comes from this game. And to me, that's why it was a massive positive. It was the value in this win. is far more than just one more win in the win column and a needed quad one win, which we'll talk about in a minute. That was huge. I think the bigger picture is the kids I talked to after the game versus the kids I talked to after the game in Charlotte. And some of them were the same kids. It was night and day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was huge. And you talk about too with the Christmas break, kind of a chance to exhale, kind of disconnect for a little bit too. You want to win before that. You don't want to be losing, especially in the state Carolina was in. Then all of a sudden you're kind of sitting at 6-6. You got this break in time to think about it, and then you're going to struggle to find great opponents or Q1 opponents in ACC play. So you put yourself in this very precarious situation. So I completely agree, man. You just got to win that game, and Carolina found a way. One of the standout performers from that game, and really over the last 6 games, at least offensively, has been Ian Jackson. I'm just going to read some stats real quick. 15.3 points per game. This is over the last 6 games. Shooting 52% from the floor, 40% from 3, and grabbing 3.8 rebounds per game. A lot of calls for him to be in the starting lineup. I don't think, and people are going to take this the wrong way, I don't think he contributes enough on the I know he doesn't contribute enough on the defensive side of the ball to really warrant starting. He's a really good scorer, and he's shown that the last 6 games. I think the problem with him so far has been that's kind of all he's contributing. Again, as a true freshman, if you're doing that and you can continue to average that, 12, 13, 14, 15 plus points a game the rest of the season, that's fantastic, and you're not going to be mad at that. I don't think he's necessarily somebody that should be thrown in the starting lineup because, again, I don't really know where he fits, and I don't think he contributes enough on other parts of the game. But I don't want to focus on those negatives necessarily. But another big-time performance for him, we're kind of seeing him grow into himself offensively, become a lot more confident, and provided a spark in that game. Let's not, let's call it how it is. I thought he was absolutely pivotal in that game, and he's also had some other big games against big-time opponents when the rest of the team has struggled. So what do you make of his play, not only in the UCLA game, but over the last couple of weeks? Because again, I think he's been one of the in the last couple of weeks there's been a lot of negativity around the program and this team. I think he's been one of those shining lights where you point at and say, yeah, you kind of seeing him grow into his own a little bit.
Well, he's got a personal motor because he's on a personal mission as well as a team mission. A lot of the other guys are still finding themselves. I mean, he's got a lot to improve on in his game. Obviously, he's not very good defensively. He's got 5 assists on the season. Last week, he had no assist in 7 turnovers.
Yeah, that's not great.
I mean, there are people look at points and they go gaga, and they don't see the rest of the game. However, I'll say this. He played 54 minutes last week, so he played starters minutes. He played 32 against UCLA. He's going to play if he needs to play. You don't have to start in order to play 27 minutes a game, which is what he did last week. He also scored 35 points. So he's I actually like him coming off the bench because I like that instant offense. I like how he could change the game. Hubert's not going to remove Elliott, RJ, or Seth from the starting lineup. So people keep talking about that. Move on from it, guys.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen. So think about, I'm looking at ways for Carolina to change games early and force other teams to have to adjust, which has been a massive problem, which is one of the reasons why they get off to such awful starts. You bring Ian in 5 minutes in, 4 minutes in, you take Elliott to the bench, you got RJ, Ian, and Seth out there. 3 guys who can get to the rim, 3 guys who can hit the 3, and in RJ and Seth's case, 2 guys who have mid-range games, floater games. Ian doesn't really have that as much yet, or hadn't shown it. So you become even more offensive as far as scoring production goes with that trio, and it changes things up some. I say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Drake Powell was playing well. Hubert put him in the starting lineup, but Drake hadn't played very well since he started. I think he needs to come off the bench too.
Agreed.
In fact, I love, and I'm going to do a drop on this. I'll go more in depth, but I love the idea, and I've said this all along, Drake and Ian coming in together. Mm-hmm. Because Drake gives you a bunch of stuff Ian doesn't. Those are the intangibles. Drake Powell's got 18 arms in different boxes, stat boxes. Ian's got like 2, but he's really good at that. And by the way, let me say this. People need to understand how much Ian Jackson has worked on his perimeter shot. 2 years ago, when David did an interview with his high school coach, he was shooting like 25% in high school. Like, this was a problem. Okay, this guy's going to come to North Carolina and want to be a shooter, and he can't shoot. That's not good. That's a really, really bad thing.
Yeah, it's not good.
Now that we're 12 games in and we've seen him hit barrages of threes at home, on neutral site courts, and against a variety of different competition, I think it's safe to say he's a pretty good perimeter shooter now. And the thing I really liked about his three ball the other day, 2 of his threes came in transition. See, where you're seeing his game evolve is instead of heading to the basket, which is the inclination for most young basketball players, he's finding spots on the perimeter because his confidence in the shot's there. And he knows that if he gets the ball in transition on the perimeter, whatever the defender does dictates what he does, and he's fine. He takes what the defender gives him. If he's going to come out and honor that three, Ian's going to go blow by him and get to the rim. If he's not going to come out and he's going to protect against the drive, Ian's going to hit the three. And he hit 2 threes, and 12 of his 24 points of the day were in transition.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge because let's face it, this team's going to get in transition. They got to get as high percentage of efficiency in transition as possible because they're not good in the half court offensively, and they're not great defensively. So the more points they can pile up in special teams, it's like returning punts for touchdowns and stuff, the better chance they have to win games. And they did that, and he was a big part of it. The evolution of that part of his game to me was eye-popping the other day because it shows there's a lot of basketball IQ stuff that's churning. That wheel's churning big time right now. And he's learning a lot of things, and he's getting better as a result. So I say with him, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. He's not concerned about starting. I promise you that. I know for a fact he's not concerned. He's supposed to get out there and play ball, man. Mm-hmm. And you can bring in a dude who could ball. I mean, when you bring a guy off the bench that everybody on their team has to say, okay, who's got him? That's a big-time thing. Mm-hmm. And there aren't a whole lot of big-time things on this team that we've been able to point to yet this year, but that's one thing. So there's no point in messing with it.
No.
And he's an NBA player, man.
Yeah.
It's when I described it with Bryant the other day, I thought about it. I actually listened to the 3 things in the car because I had 86 hours to get home in my $800, $700 rental car because everything else was canceled. Anyway, I'm going to sidebar to that hell every once in a while. I actually listened to 3 things, and one of the points I made about Ian is his drives now. Mm-hmm. He's starting to use his body, starting to use his hip a little bit more. He's got an NBA first step. A lot of college guys have an NBA first step. But do they have an NBA second step, third step, and fourth step when they explode to the basket? A lot of them don't. Ian has got it across the board there. And we saw that Saturday. We saw an absolute young future NBA player on display. And it was really beautiful to watch because he's been gifted with some incredible natural abilities that he's worked hard on. And that's like the 3-point shot. No one is born a good 3-point shooter. You have to make yourself a good 3-point shooter. Mm-hmm. And he has sweat his rear end off working on that part of his game. And it's a weapon on this team that needs to be used several times every game now. He needs to get up several shots from out there every game now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's, like I said, you read through the stats I just said. I mean, he's shooting the last 6 games, over 15 points, over 50% from the floor, 40% from 3. I mean, you keep shooting at that clip against good opponents, too.
Against good opponents, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome to have coming off your bench. I mean, it just is. And that to me is a massive asset. And you talked about starting lineup, and I want to explore that just for a second because I think it's safe to say that the Drake Powell experiment in the starting lineup isn't working. And I'm not trying to pick on Drake Powell. I agree. And I don't want to spend time talking about this because you're going to do a drop on it. But I do agree that it makes more sense with Jackson and Powell both coming on the bench. I think we've seen Ian Jackson play his best Drake Powell play his best basketball coming off the bench for the Tar Heels this year.
Pardon me as I take a step.
No, you're fine. I think that makes sense. So the question then becomes, okay, if you're moving him from that 4 spot, who do you put in? We talked a little bit about this off camera. I want to explore it on the podcast. Cade Tyson particularly sliding in there. And I know the problem with Cade Tyson is the stat line. He hasn't, I mean, you look at it, let's read through some of his stats against good opponents this year. Kansas, no points. Auburn, no points. Dayton, 2 points. Michigan State, no points. Alabama, 0 points. UCLA, the one game we're talking about, 0 points. I missed the Florida game right before that, 0 points. So,
and let me dive in very, very fast.
Yeah.
I'll kick it right back to you. almost tweeted this out there today, but I don't want people to think I'm piling on the kid. Because I so far in what I've got, how I don't know him, but in my dealings with him, I like the kid. And he's battling through a lot of crap, man. You could only imagine what he's dealing with. Lots of conversations with his brother and his family. They played 8 games against quad 1 or power 5 opponents. And in college basketball, it's power 5, not power 4, because Big East is a power conference. He has no field goals. And he's 2 for 6 from the free throw line.
It's not great.
He was 2 for 2 from the free throw line against Dayton. He's 0 for 4 since then. He missed 2 the other day. We're talking headspace here.
Oh, yeah, it's mental for sure. I think there is talent there. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I want to kick it back to you because I want to throw that in there because I want to make sure people understood that. 8 games against quad 1 or power conference teams. They played 7 quad 1 games. The other one would be Georgia Tech. He's got 0 field goals, and he's 2 for 6 from the free throw line. That right there is all you need to know about the headspace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
kicking it
bad.
back to you.
Yeah, it's bad. There's no two ways around it. And I think so. We had to preface that by throwing this kind of potential, scenario out there. Is you can easily see why he's not starting and why he isn't playing a ton. I think, but to explore it a little bit is, I think the team could benefit more from Drake going to the bench and sliding Tyson in. And my theory with Tyson is maybe a lot of it's mental. You can just easily tell that it's not rocket science. Maybe throwing him in the lineup gives him a little bit of that confidence back, but it's not just that. I also look at what we talked a lot about this, what the Florida coach said about Tyson, because you look at his stat again, one of the weirdest stat lines on the season. He doesn't do anything against power 5 opponents, but you look at the LaSalle game, 23 points, 9 of 14 shooting, 5 for 10 from 3-point land. You saw, okay, he can do it. It's a different opponent and it's not against a good team, but he can do it. He's shown that. He's had other games this year where he sparked up a little bit. So, but the Florida coach came out and said, I believe after they beat Carolina in Charlotte, when Tyson was on the floor, we had to keep him in mind because we know he's not shooting great, but we saw what he can do against LaSalle. So he is a threat. And he does distract and take some of your attention as a defensive unit, speaking from Florida's perspective. He does, take some of your attention there because you have to at least keep him in mind and guard him when he's standing out. And what that can do is open the lane up a little bit and allow a guard-heavy team in North Carolina.
Space. It creates more
to potentially get to the basketball, which I think Carolina needs. So I think that could be a potential solution. And I look at it and I say, there's no guarantee that it'll work. Heck, it's more than likely throwing Tyson in the lineup doesn't really change much. But I think even if he's not hitting shots or doing much offensively, he can at least maybe be a bit of a distraction, somebody you have to keep an eye on more so than a Drake Powell, who I think benefits the team more again coming off the bench. So it's a collectivization of moving him to the bench benefits the team more. Maybe even Tyson in the lineup gets him going a little bit more, maybe raises his confidence because we said it's very mental. So what do you make of that potential scenario? Because I just look at that 4 and 5 spot right now, AJ, and I'm just – it's just not really working. And that's my opinion. It makes something. Why not try something different, especially with Campbell coming up and especially with tricky but winnable games potentially coming up with it when ACC play.
I put on our message board last week after the Florida game, a couple of days before UCLA, that I thought Cade should go in the starting lineup. And I explained why, and you hit on some of it right there. Part of it, and I'm going to go more in depth in the Daily Drop, but he needs to be unlocked. This team is not going to be close to what it can be unless he gets unlocked. Mm-hmm. So he's not going to be unlocked playing 7 minutes. He's not going to be unlocked coming off the bench and deferring and being tight. It's not going to happen. Now, it may not work, but the 4 spot on this team, to me, is the bigger issue than the 5 spot. The 5 spot, they were rolling guys in there. They're not going to get much production. The offensive approach this year basically ignores the 5 spot. They didn't against LaSalle. But by the way, LaSalle's 147 the net. It's not terrible team.
Yeah, not horrible. No.
LaSalle's not, Charleston Southern. Mm-hmm. So if they're not going to use the 5, at least utilize the 4. They're starting games right now, and Drake's not a 4. He knows he's not. I asked him in October about possibly playing some 4. He's like, well, yeah, I guess I can play some 4. He's not going to say he can't. but he's not any prototype. They have no prototype 4 other than Cade Tyson. It's not Withers. Withers can shoot okay from out there, but he tries to drive too often. And with Jalen Withers, it's 50-50 at best when he drives from the corner. The ball's ever going to get to the basket.
I kind of forgot about him.
He just loses his handle a lot. He doesn't have great fingertips. The Lord did not bless him with great fingertips. It's not his fault. He's doing the best he can with what he's got. Van Allen Lubin is not a 4. People kept saying, oh, he's Harrison Ingram. I kept saying, no, he's not. He's a 5 in a 6'8" body, but with a 7'4" wingspan. Tyson is the prototype. With his physique, he gives you more size. He's not as bad defensively. He's not great on the perimeter, but he's better down low. He bodies and he's upright. You look at some of the games they played, they've been a little bit better when he's been on the court just because he gives them a little bit more brawn. He's a little bit more of a rotate defender, which this team is terrible rotating defensively. And I'm not singing the Cade Tyson praises defensively, trust me. But this is more, you've got to start games better. You got to start games where there's more space. And Todd Golden said it last week, as you alluded to. The two guys, the only two players that they were worried about were R.J. Davis and Cade Tyson. That were right out of Florida's coach's mouth. Not mine. That's what Todd Golden said. I'm sitting there 6 feet from him when he said it. I'm thinking, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Spoken like a coach, not a fan. It made a lot of sense. So the only way to take advantage of that and get any use out of Cade Tyson this season is to unlock him. And he's not going to be unlocked in the current role. The 4 spot has been sort of a wasteland for this team all year. And when I say that, they're not getting 4-man ball out of the 4 spot. I had said recently, maybe start Jay Wash at the 4. Maybe that unlocks him because he's more comfortable facing the basket than his back. But I think we're kind of seeing what he is. And I don't know if there's anything to unlock there. But there clearly is with Cade. Cade's the one guy that sort of hasn't arrived in the season yet, I think. And if he's ever going to, you've got to play him a lot of minutes and just let him out there. As I said on the board last night, I think it was, Hubert should just put him on the court, turn his head, and then look back a few weeks later and see what he's got. I'm dead serious.
Yeah, I agree.
Because if he's still the guy we've seen, okay, then and he's a 5-minute guy the rest of the way. But if you unlock him, it changes everything. Imagine an offensive lineup scoring with RJ, Seth, Ian, and Cade on the floor with Lubin, who's incredibly efficient whenever he tries to do something down low. Very efficient player. He's a much better player than people realize. He uses his body. But they can rotate. They can just focus on rotating at the 5. And the 4 could be a combination of Cade and Drake. I think if Drake is playing 12 to 14, 15 minutes at the 4, I think he's a much better player in that role. And honestly, they started the second half the other day with Claude at the 5 at 6'7", and Ian was a de facto 4 at 6'4". You can run that lineup out there some. So you can utilize that 4 spot to get very creative with your rotations. And the 5, you just stick with Withers, Lubin, Jay Wash, and Claude. And whoever is the guy playing better, you just roll with them.
Yeah.
But you've got to figure out the 4 spot. If that gets figured out, I think Elliott's turnovers go down because there's more space. He's trying to pass the ball through people because this team does not move without the ball. This is not a good screen setting team. But if you've got the space and the defenders have to guard, you're creating screen space, if you will, just by simply moving people out. There's a reason Carolina was pretty decent offensively in a lot of stretches against Florida, and they didn't have the dribble, drive, fall because Cade was on the floor and the rotation defensively was further away. They got to do something because as it currently is, it's not an NCAA tournament team, although maybe they win enough in the ACC to get there, but that's all they are. If you have a chance at taking your team to another level and really having a good ACC year, which is still possible, he must be unlocked.
Yeah,
Period.
I agree. And I think, especially when it's a confidence thing, it's so clearly, I'm not saying it's all confidence. We've seen him flare up at times, seen him hit shots, we've seen him have good games at times, going back to that LaSalle game, but it feels like sometimes maybe just throwing somebody back in the lineup can breed a little bit more confidence, and maybe that fixes some of the issues and kind of gets him going. But I do agree. I don't really know what they have to lose at the 4 position because nobody's playing well that's starting there.
Yes, Drake has not been good since he was
he's better coming off the bench, and I think the team benefits from him coming off the bench.
I agree. I love Drake and Ian coming off together.
Yeah, me too.
Because what you do is you're inserting a crap load of vitality onto the court. You're inserting high NBA level bounciness and athleticism. You're inserting an NBA level scorer. You're inserting a jack of all trades guy in a lot of sense, like a stat sheet stuffer, if you will, however terminology you want to use with Drake. Drake is a very sound player. And you're also maybe relieving some pressure on him. His plus minus has gone down because he's in the starting lineup, but they don't start well. I mean, he is not an offensive thing. He scored the first basket the other day, but the ball happened to go through the basket. He's not an offensive threat as a starter yet, but he could be coming off the bench because that's a different role. And he could be a flash player. You can insert him into the game 5 times for 4 minutes each time, 5 minutes each time, and he's 20-plus minutes, and he's giving constant injections of juice into the team. And this is a club that needs that. So I like utilizing those two that way. And then as far as the rest of it goes, I think you stick with Lubin and you just roll with you give them all a shot and you just roll with whoever's not in foul trouble. I would use up 20 fouls with those guys.
Yeah.
I would say bang, get under the skin of the opponent, bang, be gritty, be nasty, be dirty. Each of you has so you got 16 fouls. Mm-hmm. And if Claude fouls out, okay.
Mm-hmm. Anyway,
that's what I would do.
I agree with the 5. I think whoever's playing the best down there on any given night, you just continue to roll with them. I think that's what you're going to have to do because nobody's stepping up down there. There's not really anybody you look at and say they've made that 5 spot their own.
But it's a flawed approach. They're not given the opportunity to step up because outside of the LaSalle game, how many entry passes for conventional lower block baskets have the 5s gotten this year? And it's not just the number isn't really to me at this juncture. How many have they had? It's how many has the team even tried? They are hurting themselves minimal with a very flawed offensive approach right now.
Yeah, it's one of the most stagnant Carolina teams I've ever seen in my life.
There's no movement. The other night, and I'm texting this, UCLA's got 3 and 4 guys moving in half-court offense. Mm-hmm. There were times when Carolina, in a half-court man-to-man offense, one guy was moving, and it was a lollygag screen. Oh, I got to go set a screen at the top of the key. Let's go set a screen.
And you can see it coming, yeah.
And they're setting screens where there's no physical contact. They're not even screens. They're not even obstacles. Mm-hmm. It's like, don't step on that shoe on the floor. Mm-hmm. That's what the defender's like, I got to avoid the shoe and I can stay with my guy. It's like a zone offense against man-to-man defense. It's a very flawed approach. So they can get more production from the post if the intent is to try to get more production from the post, but that intent hasn't really been there. It was in the LaSalle game they had success, but that was LaSalle.
Yeah.
So they're already playing with an arm behind the back or part of it. When you have the 4 spot completely unfigured out and no answers there, you're playing with a full arm behind your back every game. That's why I think stick him out there, turn away for a few weeks, see if he gets unlocked. If he doesn't, you're right where you are right now. You go back to what you're doing and just hope for the best.
Yeah,
but if he does get unlocked and he starts being that dude, this team's going to go up a full notch plus, and they'll be a much, much better team, and one that you can start looking at saying, you know what, it's an NCAA tournament team. They can beat some good people, and they're fortunate that they got a few weeks into ACC play before they have to play Pitt and Duke. Mm-hmm. But those Pitt-Duke games, at Pitt, at Duke, home against Pitt in a 3-game stretch, they cannot lose those 3. They're going to have to win one of those.
Yeah, it's low. I think just to summarize that, I think it's low risk, high reward throwing Tyson in because there's no guarantee it works. But I mean, what are you really losing by throwing him in there? It's not like it's not like this team we talked about a lot here. They don't start great, and I've said it 15 times. I'm gonna say it for the 16th time today. I think Powell benefits you coming off the bench more than he does starting. So there is no guarantee that Tyson coming into the lineup maybe gets him going like they need him to. But I don't really see the risk in at least trying it, especially.
Yeah, he's not.
It just doesn't make sense not to,
He's not going to get going as it stands.
Yeah, then we have proof that it's not. We also, AJ, have proof that Powell coming off the bench. We have clear evidence that Powell has been more productive coming off the bench than he has been starting. So why not switch that up? I'm very intrigued to see if Hubert tries that. And I think you have a great opportunity having these days off, having a couple days of practice leading up to a game against Campbell before you dive more into ACC play. So
the only problem with that is Cade's production has been against American, Hawaii, and LaSalle.
That's the problem.
Well, if Cade goes for 15 or 18 against Campbell at this juncture, that means nothing.
Yeah.
It means nothing in the grand scheme of things. The Campbell game, to me, since they have that game coming up, the only thing that matters is to win by a huge margin because Ken Palm loves blowouts. And the people on the committee look at Ken Palm. Mm-hmm. You know who the head of the selection committee is this year?
Who?
Bubba Cunningham. I'm dead serious. He's the head. I've talked to him about it. He hates the net, by the way. Can't stand it.
Oh, it's stupid. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I shouldn't say hates it and can't stand it, but he thinks there needs to be other things implemented. Okay.
He knows it's a flawed system.
I know that they look at Ken Palm. Ken Palm's decent. Is everybody in my business and our business looks at Ken Palm. So you've got to blow people out. You've got to blow out Campbell will be the lowest rated net team they play all year. I mean, even Americans like 228. It's not like they're in the 300s. There's 360 or 370 Division I teams. So as bad as American looked, they're 228. Hawaii is 178, 177. They're not completely awful. It's not good, but that's not Prairie View. That's not New Jersey Institute of Technology, which is a Division I school. Okay. So it's not that kind of garbage. Mm-hmm. So they've blown out some moderately decent, or just, I would say moderately not horrible, if that makes any sense, teams. Campbell's a horrible team. It's the lowest rated team they're going to play all year. They need to beat them by like 40 or 50. Mm-hmm. So that's all that matters. So don't get hurt, beat them by 40 or 50, and move on to the next one. That's all that matters in that game.
Yeah,
how they do it doesn't matter.
No.
And I'm going to have the shortest three things in history Sunday night.
Yeah. Again, you're 100% right. It's just one of those games that Carolina has to be winning. They need to be winning it big. And again, I still think it's potentially a good opportunity to maybe breed some more confidence into a guy like Tyson, because you've seen him have decent games against these lesser opponents. Doesn't mean anything. It doesn't really prove
I
anything.
agree with that.
But at least maybe it builds some kind of confidence, and at least gets maybe putting him in the rotation, putting Powell on the bench, just gets them back used to being in that type of rotation before they go to Louisville and Notre Dame, because those are tough games. I know they're not great teams, but they're two very looseable games for North Carolina. I don't think anybody would be shocked.
You're 100% right. That's a really good observation. I'm going to feed off of that. So I will give you an assist according to the passer. Actually, he needs to see the ball go through the basket. So that's the other thing.
It's not going to hurt him.
Yeah, he needs to see the ball. It doesn't matter. He just needs to see the ball go through the basket and needs to get cheers at home. Mm-hmm. I think I'm going back to my original thing earlier. The kids fed off that. Like they felt like North Carolina. There were a lot more North Carolina people there than Kentucky people there, which doesn't happen very often when the two are in the same building. Kentucky is the college football, basketball, and Alabama is the college football. Like they just travel better than anybody else.
Yeah, everywhere, yeah.
I've seen it a million times. I've seen Kentucky play in 15 different buildings probably. Always have more fans than anybody else. Always. And Carolina dominated that building. When the Carolina game, by the time the Kentucky-Ohio State game was in the second half, the building was half empty. And there was still a lot of light blue in the crowd.
I'll believe it.
Those kids felt like Tar Heels. So for Cade, hearing cheers at home, feeling like a Tar Heel, seeing the ball go to the basket, I agree with you on that. When I do my 5 things to watch for that game, which will be like this big, that will be one of the things, and I will point to the passer on that one. You're right on that.
Hey man, always happy to dish out a couple assists, man. You know, I played basketball back in the day. I always like, you know, a nice little driving kick kind of assist.
That was a no look, just a little flip. I caught and I took the three and made it.
All right, man, I'm happy to do it for you. Happy to do it for you. I appreciate
and
you.
I ran back up the court.
Yeah, holding the three, the three goggles like RJ likes to do. But yeah, real quickly, Edge, before we head out, just to talk about the net for, I know we've talked about it, just 1 second. I mentioned earlier 2-5 wins over Dayton and UCLA. You put out a piece on our website talking about Carolina and the net, and essentially based on the rankings right now, this week ranking, these will change throughout the season, no doubt about it. But there are potentially about 9 Q1 games that Carolina still has coming up: 2 versus Duke, 2 versus Pitt, 1 at home versus SMU, 1 at Clemson, 1 at Louisville coming up soon, 1 at FSU, and again 1 at Notre Dame coming up soon. That will change for sure, but that's where it is right now. Again, illustrates the importance of beating UCLA, moving to 2-5. If you don't, you're sitting at 1-6 in Q1 games, going into where there probably isn't a lot of opportunities coming up left, because I mentioned I do expect those to fluctuate with some of those teams. But is Carolina? It seems like they're definitely in a better position than they were before the UCLA game. They're number 34 in the net as of today. It seems like it fluctuates every 15 minutes, but that's where they're at right now.
Yeah.
Carolina I know they're not in a great position, but it feels like they're in a decent position right now to where they at least control their own destiny a lot of these ways. I know these games are going to change and these rankings and all this stuff is going to fluctuate every freaking day, but it feels like, okay, we've got a couple nice wins under your belt. You don't really expect UCLA or Dayton to change his Q1 wins. There's always potential, but you don't expect that necessarily to. Feels like Carolina, at least going into ACC play coming up soon, is going to have maybe a little bit more opportunities than we thought they might have a few weeks ago to get it. And that, I guess that's good for North Carolina. It takes a little bit of that stress off you, where we don't have to, and also good for us, we don't have to talk about net necessarily every 15 minutes. Now, if they go lose a couple games, that all changes, but feels like they're at least in a better position than they were a week ago, to say that.
I think what you're saying is we can see a path now.
Yeah, there's a path. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, the path could be littered with the Wicked Witch, the monkeys flying in there and pulling all the hay out of the scarecrow.
Yeah, it's not a smooth road necessarily. But
not at all. Not at all.
There is a road.
The heels are going to have to click their slippers constantly for a while. Mm-hmm. Boy, that was a deviation in an attempt at some kind of analogy.
I'm a Wizard of Oz fan, man.
I love the Wizard of Oz.
Great move, great move.
I love it. I'm also a realist in knowing that they won a game which they didn't play real well, and it could be a springboard thing. But what it did is it recreated a path for them. Now, people are saying Notre Dame's 91 in the net right now.
I was surprised.
And not all Q1 games look alike, but they're important. To beat a team that ends up in the top 75 of the net, beating them on the road is a quad 1 game. For neutral site, it's top 50. For home, it's top 30. So my question about UCLA is, how do they handle the travel in the Big Ten? Not only is it going to be far travel, but absurdly cold travel. I mean, there's some guys on the UCLA team that if they have jackets, it's issued by the school, Yeah. So how do they handle? Now, the Big Ten doesn't have any great teams, but it's got a lot of good teams, a lot of tough road environments. So we'll see how they do. Carolina fans need to root for UCLA to hold their own at home and snag some road wins. So they stay in the top 50. That stays a quad 1 games. You need to root for UCLA. You need to root for Michigan State for many of the same reasons, because Michigan State is as good as Izzo is. Michigan State losing 7 out of 9 January going into February wouldn't surprise anybody.
No.
It happens a lot.
It wouldn't.
So fortunately, they play such a great schedule that their net's going to usually be pretty high. But you got to root for Izzo to win games. And you've got to root for Dayton to dominate the Atlantic 10. Dayton's 41 in the net. They beat Marquette last week. Dayton's good. Mm-hmm. And as I've said 1,000 times, Dayton needs to be in the Big East. Dayton and Temple need to go to the Big East. Just go over there and deal with it. Do it now. So you root for Dayton to dominate. And there's some pretty good teams at the top of the A10. Rhode Island's 10-1, 11-1. Loyola Chicago is really good this year. VCU is always good. It's a good league. There's some good teams there. So Dayton needs to beat those teams, beat them on the road, just stack wins, stay in the top 50, and that'll help Carolina a lot. I think some teams to look out for in the ACC that could become quad one games. Wake Forest, potentially, they're 102 right now, but there's enough talent there, although it's such a schizo team, and I'm not a big Forbes. Everybody loves Forbes, and I admire him for what he's had to go through with his wife and her toughness and fight, and that's so much more important in basketball. And I really admire how he's kind of lived that publicly because he's got a lot of strength from it. And I can identify with that as someone who's gone through some really tough times with his wife's health the last 2 years and still getting a text today about it. She's in Asheville. So I get that. And he's got talent. If this is the right group for him and they get better, I think they can get better, that could become a quad one game, but also very losable. Carolina doesn't do well in Winston-Salem.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that.
NC State's 104, and I still think the state team can get better. There are enough parts there where if they start stacking wins in the league, which is possible, that could become a quad one road game. Florida State has been what would be a quad one road game all year, but when I watch that team play, they look to me like a club that's going to lose 8 out of 10 at some point.
Yeah, it feels like that.
I put them on the list, but I just don't see that being a quad one game by the time Selection Sunday comes. But if it is, Tar Heels got to go down there and win. And they don't play that great down there. Not since Bryce Johnson went for 39 and 23. So they're slim pickings. SMU, in order for it to be a quad one game, they got me in the top 30. They're 30 right now in the net. It's a pretty good team, actually. Andy Enfield, who was at Southern Cal as the coach there, they've recently picked up some pretty nice wins. They beat LSU last week. LSU's not bad. So what I'm getting at is you got to really watch these things. And I think best case scenario for the ACC and for North Carolina is for Notre Dame. Louisville, by the way, is 52 because they played a really good schedule. You want Louisville, Notre Dame, Wake Forest, Florida State, and SMU to win games in the league.
Yeah, Clemson in the mix too.
Yeah, Clemson's going to be there.
It'll be regardless.
They had a tough week last week, a really bad week. Losing home to Memphis and losing to South Carolina is a bad week for them.
Yeah,
they're better than that, but they're going to be okay. They're going to win a lot of league games. You want these other teams to load up, and that means that Stanford's okay, but it's a home game. It's not going to be a quad one game. You want Cal, Stanford, Virginia Tech, which is a train wreck. I was talking to Andy Katz the other day about the ACC, and we were talking about how bad Miami is, and he says, "But have you seen Virginia Tech? They're worse than Miami."
Yeah.
So you want those teams they win, they only beat each other. What that'll do is stacking wins for some teams will elevate the chances of more quad one games for Carolina and for ACC teams, and get teams in the field. If it works out by script. If Jim Phillips were to have it, I don't think Jim Phillips has a script. I'm not sure he even knows. I could go there. I could do Friedlander and just napalm right now.
Bash him for 10 minutes.
He's a wonderful, wonderful man, but there's no there, right?
Yeah.
Not very happy. So if you could get 7 or 8 teams to just crush it in league play, they can get that many teams in the tournament still. And those are all Q1 opportunities. And for Carolina, they're 7-5. Let's look at Utopia for a moment. Well, first weekend of the NCAA tournament is in Raleigh. It's one of the 8 sites. It's not out of the realm that they're out of that yet, because if they end up going 500 in quad one games and they can win 24 games and win the ACC tournament or go to the finals, it's not out of the realm that they would be in Raleigh with Duke, because they'll sell the building out. Because the NCAA still wants to sell tickets. So that's still in play, and that's what the UCLA win did. Is it created a path to actually have this conversation, which you and I did not have before today. You and I have not talked about any of this. We talk a ton without the record button on, but we have not talked about any of this. It was all just a matter of, can they beat somebody? So the path is now there for some very interesting things to happen. So what we're doing is we're telling Carolina fans, these are all the things you got to root for. And you got to start rooting for it now. My dad likes to say, "Oh, I don't want to talk about net in December." Well, you got to talk about net in December because this affects your net in March.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's my fourth long-winded answer of the day.
Hey, man, there's nothing.
The dogs are being quiet. Kim and Ellie are not back from Asheville yet. I'm feeling my oats, man.
Hey, man, there's nothing more I enjoy than talking about the net in December. It's awesome. It's just awesome in it, AJ. Just love doing
when
that.
You cover a team that's, thrown itself into a sinkhole.
Yeah.
The net becomes the topic. I guarantee you Kansas fans aren't talking net right now.
No.
Auburn fans are. Auburn just wants to get healthy, and they're the best team in the country not healthy. That's the best team in the country, by the way.
100%. Yeah. No
if
doubt.
the tournament started today, I would put all my shekels on the Auburn.
Yeah, a little bit of a UConn vibe from last season where it's like, I don't know who's beating them if the tournament starts today. It could change, but still.
A great coach, and Bruce Pearl would be, look, if Raleigh Massimino can have a national championship ring, Bruce Pearl deserves one.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man.
There's some bad coaches that had titles, and Bruce Pearl is a very good basketball coach.
Yeah, he's done a fantastic job down there, man. But yeah, we'll wrap this podcast up finishing off with a nice little net, putting a little bow on the net right there, because I know Carolina fans just love hearing about the net. And
if you want to advertise, reach out, THI media at yahoo.com. I will be the one that responds. Let's throw around some ideas. Let's get creative. And if you're interested in doing something with our podcast and coming on as part of your sponsor, I'm open to it. I think it'd be a lot of fun. We're going to try to get creative and diversify some of the things we do anyway, launching into the new year. So let that be a part of it. If you're up for it, reach out. We'll talk.
Yeah, holler at us, man. You know where to find us. And we appreciate you guys watching as you always do. Here's what you can do for free. You can like the video. You can share the video. You can hit subscribe as well. Hit that notification bell too. Head on over to TarIllustrated.com. This is not free, but if you want to sign up for premium subscription, $8.33 a month. We've been running a lot of promos recently. So if you've missed out on that, shame on you a bit, because we've had a few, but you can still sign up. $8.33 a month, premium content, ton of access to our message boards, all types of stuff that you can't view unless you're a paid subscriber. And I mean, with everything that's been going on with football, coaching search, and the transfer portal, basketball, David Siss film reviews, which I absolutely love, all premium content.
The
you got
timeline
to view it.
The Mac the Belichick timeline is worth it right there.
Sitting on the front page as we record
I got
right
home
now.
From that disastrous 36-hour trip home, came in, gave the dog some love, came in, hooked up my laptop, and banged that piece out. It's 2,400 words, and it's worth it. So there's a lot of misconceptions about a lot of stuff. You go read the timeline, and you will have no misconceptions about how everything played out. You'll know exactly what happened.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Go check that piece out. It's on the front page right now. I don't know if it will be by the time this podcast comes out. It'll be up there somewhere. It'll be up there.
Yeah, it'll be up there.
Go check that out. Really, really interesting piece. And we're going to do a football show too. So stay tuned for that. We'll have a couple drops coming later this week as well. So Christmas week, Christmas Eve right now, but we still got, that's 5 videos off the top of my head if you include Saturday's 3 things for the bowl game too. And then Sunday basketball too. So it never ends, man. But we appreciate you guys watching as you always do. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Everybody has a fantastic Christmas. Enjoy it. Take some time off. Spend it with your family. And yeah, man, Carolina basketball going nowhere. So a lot of basketball to cover this year, and still a lot of football to cover this year too, man. This state's like it never freaking ends when you got a new coach in there trying to hire a staff and the portal wide open. So come on over to our
for the football people. I'm horrible today. I would get so many demerits if this was a decorum show, communication decorum. So I've interrupted you like 40 times.
Nah, it's all good.
If someone commits in the portal Wednesday, Christmas Day, we're not going to have it until Thursday.
Yeah, we might throw a little something on the board, but that's about it. Yeah.
Well, somebody might, but I'm telling everybody stay away from it.
Yeah.
Kevin, Roy, and Brian have been grinding. When that basketball game started the other day, after tip-off started, 2 portal commits, a class of 2025 commit, and a portal entry during the game.
It's
and
like these guys not know basketball's good.
Because they were on top of it, I could focus on the basketball game.
Yeah.
Instead of dealing with that stuff. And I am so grateful for that. So grateful for them. Grateful for you. Grateful for so many things. And man, we've been kicking some rear in that stuff because those guys have been on top of it.
Yeah, Brian and Kevin have been doing a fantastic job following that along, man. I don't know how they do it. They're on 24/7.
Kevin's still got the whole cancer thing going on.
I know, man. I don't know how he's doing it.
In a season of prayers and thanks and stuff like that, please include Kevin in your prayers.
Absolutely, man. He's been a rock star. I don't know how I think he fires off about 1,000 texts in that group chat every day. I don't know how he does it. I really don't, but he's been all over it.
A third of them have poisonous darts pointed at AJ.
Yeah, I don't know how he does it.
He gets in that mode, man, where he's just going to go after me on stuff. He doesn't realize that I'm loving it and laughing at the same time.
Yeah, no, he's but all serious. He's been doing him.
See, his edge is back now, which is a great sign.
He's got the edge back. That's what you want to see.
Because the edge wasn't there for a while. Because I think he's worried about his wife and daughters and
absolutely
gonna live, man. So he's got the edge back, and I love it because that means Kevin's feeling good.
I love it too, man. Now, shout out to Kevin. Keep him in your prayers, man. Keep battling, keep swinging. Tylee strong, as Carolina fans like to say. And yeah, man, we appreciate you guys watching as always. And we'll see y'all next time. Thanks.